A Carrera GT on Bring a Trailer gets bid well over $1 million, and everyone is losing their minds. Like the world is ending. What is going on BAT? This is Bid Nerds. The bidding starts now. Bid Nerds is your daily YouTube car game show, where we predict the online auction results of the most interesting cars on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, Hagerty Marketplace, and more. It's just like the Price is Right game show. Play along and see if you can beat the nerds. Yep, it's time for Bid Nerds, brand new live edition here in the Downtown Container Park in downtown Las Vegas. My name is John Polnick. I'm your host, along with my partner, Michael Deeb in San Francisco. We're both back in our hometowns. What's up, Michael Deeb?
Hey, look at us. Freshly back from Los Angeles, where we were at the toilet convention with Rami and Yuri and John and all of the people that came up and said hi to us at the LA Hilton, where we basically posted up for like 24 straight hours. And it feels like we drank for 24 straight hours, but we only drank like really hard for 6 hours. And then we were just drunk for the next 18. So it was, that was a really fun weekend. I'm glad I made the trip. We had a really good time. I don't know, John. I think the theory that you and I were running with was that because the swap meet on Sunday in Anaheim was canceled due to mudslides, it felt like a lot less people came into town for the whole weekend, because it was a beautiful day in Los Angeles on Saturday for the literature and toy show, and yet that crowd felt like a pandemic thing. Like there was nobody there. It was really weird how empty that convention hall was. Don't get me wrong, there were still plenty of people there to make it, I guess, technically work. But some of the display people, some of the people that were selling were packing up their stuff and leaving at noon. 11:30, we saw people walking out the door. They're supposed to stay till 2 or 3, and that just wasn't the case. The crowd felt like it was less than 50% of a normal toy and lit. John, you've been dragging me to it for, I would say, 7 years, but have you been going prior to that? Have you been going for like 8, 9, or 10 years? Like when was the first time?
Yeah, I want to say I've been going maybe 10. I don't know. Before we get really too far into that, I wanted to let everybody know that we got Wade in the room too. Remember, Wade? Wade is here.
I am.
Yeah. Wade from Tech Daily. What's up, buddy? Deeb's like, whatever.
Look, I really want to hear about
on Instagram.
No, I really want to hear about your guys' crazy weekend. You kids and your partying. I can't keep up. But no, it was a beautiful day here in Las Vegas this morning for your Car Zone Cafe, and I'm glad you made it back in town for that. And it sounds like you guys really lived it up and were quite lit at the lit show. Sounds like
it was the most lit toy and lit show I think I've ever been to, because of our little scene. Everyone else was pretty slow on the take, but yeah, we were very hungover in the hall there. The thing, look, it was definitely light, and we weren't really selling anything, right? So for us, we didn't care. We just wanted to, let people know about Bid Nerds and let people know about all, Vegas Auto Fest, that kind of stuff. That's why we're there. And if we were actually selling trinkets, that would have kind of sucked. I wonder what the sales were like. It couldn't have been very good. And so I do feel bad for the folks who were actually slinging stuff. But, good news for us. We did make a lot of great connections. I think we're going to have some great time. We're going to have a great time bringing people from SoCal to Vegas Auto Fest, which has always been a challenge for us. I mean, it's been SoCal just is they're not aware of anything other than what's in their like right in front of their nose, right? The SoCal people don't want to go if the car show is if it's in the valley, they don't want to go, right? So to get them to come out to Vegas is like pulling teeth. But I think the greatest part was that our good friends over at Sierra Madre, Ben the professor, it works over there, and they started doing an open house every Thursday before Toy and Lit Show in the last 3 years, I think, right? And it turns out they've been calling it Auto Fest. And it's like, what the hell, guys? We started AutoFest back in like 17 or 18, right? So as it turns out, we're sitting at our booth, and Jorge from Sierra Madre, the founder, right, who I have never actually met, right? We know who each other is. I don't know, grammatically incorrect there, but Jorge comes up and he sees my shirt that says AutoFest. He's like, did we make those? I'm like, yeah, no, we made those because AutoFest is our name. You stole our name. He's like, he
blushed.
Yeah,
he totally blushed. It was hilarious.
AutoFest is, it's like, what did he say? It's like a copy, what's a Xerox? It's like it's like Xerox. It's just a very general term. Like, that sounds like something someone would say if they stole my name. Yeah. So he was like, okay.
And then Jenna, cute little Jenna, comes running over and she's like, my bad. I was the one that came up with that. And she was apologetic. She came rushing over like 10 minutes later and was like, couldn't stop, apologizing, which was hilarious. So JP cornered her and said, we'll accept your apology if you come on the show with us, which she agreed to do. So, Jenna, if you're watching.
Well, and on top of that, not just come on our show, but they agreed to bring Sierra Madre to Vegas Auto Fest and help us promote Vegas Auto Fest for months before Vegas Auto Fest, so we can get more SoCal people to come out and enjoy the show. So, by the way, if you guys haven't marked your calendar yet, it is 9/21/24. That is the 21st of September. So make sure you're making plans around that this fall to come down to Vegas and hang out with us. All right. Isn't
there a song about that?
I'm sure there is.
21st night of September. You know that. Come on, man. I'm not making that up.
Boy, I know we drank a lot this weekend, but did you get roofied? Because I'm wondering if all your drinks like kind of like
buy Rami
grape flavored. You're like, because it was just vodka. It wasn't supposed to have any fruity taste in it. If your vodka drink tastes fruity, it means you've been roofied. Just FYI. Just words to live by.
I was the only one drinking old fashions, so who knows what was in those.
You wouldn't know you wouldn't know if they put anything in there. All right, so we started off the show talking about how crazy things are on Bring a Trailer, and we're going to get right to that in a second. But first, we're going to talk about our good friends at Gaudin Porsche and Gaudin Classic of Las Vegas. They came out, they came out in force this morning. They had a bunch of Taycons. Paul himself came out in his 993 cab. Paul's not a cabriophobe. Gotta love that. And he was in full. He had his DF shirt. He had his.
Did he buy one?
Yeah, he's had a polar silver cab for like years now. Nice. I mean, and it's basically a copy of my old his is all stock. His is really, really nice. But so he was rocking the drop top, and of course Mikey was out there. Everybody was out there. It was just a huge scene. But Gaudin Porsche and Gaudin Classic of Las Vegas, if you guys are looking for your parts for your classic cars, or if you're looking for a Porsche Classic, they are definitely the best folks in the world to talk to about that. Look, we've had our nerd herd tell us in the comments that they've called Gaudin Classic to buy parts and said, hey, I heard about you guys on Bid Nerds. And they're like, what is that? Right. So Paul specifically said to me, Paul Jarrett, the general manager, he's like, hey man, thanks for volunteering. And I'm like, you're welcome. What am I volunteering for? And he's like, oh, we're having an all staff meeting. You're coming in and presenting the whole DUR ecosystem so that our staff knows what the hell Bid Nerds is and DURFOS Nation and all that stuff. So when people ask about it, they actually aren't like, what's that? So that'll be cool to get the team up to speed. But the thing is, I think if you're like going, hey, what time is it? I need to get my fine Swiss watch serviced or repaired. If you call our Smiths in Idaho and say, hey, I heard about you guys on Bid Nerds, there ain't nobody there that's going to be like, what's that? Because you're going to get Anthony, the master tech, the guy that's going to service your watch. He's going to be like, hell yeah, I'm a member of the Nerd Herd, yo. I have a T-shirt that says so.
I think as a sponsor of the show, he's an officer of the Nerd Herd. I think he's like an elected official.
I do think they need to structure the Nerd Herd. Right. The Nerd Nation needs to like organize, right? It's maybe that's like a corporation saying, yeah, all you employees go ahead and start a labor union. It's a bad idea. What am I saying? Right? These guys are going to team up against us, and I can only imagine the force of nature that will come down upon us once they figure out that they don't need us anymore.
Yeah, between Christmas and New Year's, they vote for new hosts. We love the show.
You think
It's
it would
just you
take that
guys.
long? I
just you
think
guys.
I think it'd be about a week. Who's hanging out in the Nerd Herd today? We got everybody. Look at this. We got everybody from all over the world. Gerd is hanging out. Chris Carbine, of course, Carbine Motors. He is one of the best Nerd Nation nerd members out there. He's doing the work. Ross Churchhouse, OG, one of the first. He's in New Zealand. How you doing, Ross? My old friend Leif is hanging out. What's up, Leif? Jeez, holy cow. Dr. John is hanging out. Who else is in here? Sahan is in the chat. You guys are going to have fun tonight. Of course, Anthony from Our Smiths, Sergeant Tom, Dark Closet. If I missed you on the list here, I apologize, but it's going to be a lot of fun tonight. I think we're going to get some new people chiming in into the chat. I keep telling people about the show, and they're like, yeah, I watch it on my phone or whatever. I'm like, oh, why don't you join us in the chat? And they're like, what chat? What do you mean? I'm like, watch it on your computer or watch somewhere where you can actually, interact and have some fun with this. And they're like, oh my God, that'd be so much better. So we'll see how that works out tonight. All right, well, let's get to the market. Let's get to what's going on in PCAR Market and Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids. We made some predictions on the last episode like we always do because that's what the show is all about. What was the first car on the list? Michael Deeb.
JP, I selected this rest of the world 1995 Ferrari F512M. And we had, if you remember, Bradley Brownell, who was the very first guest of Bid Nerds when we started this thing several years ago. We both agreed that Bradley's probably been on the show more than anybody else. But anyway, I picked this car for us to take a look at. And then when I was finished introducing it, I gushed and said, I always hated the way this car looked. But looking at the photos of this one and remembering those wheels from I think it was the Ethos or show car that Ferrari made, like something about this car is starting to make sense to me now. And then when I got done, hanging myself out to dry, you two both were like, nah, that thing's effing ugly. And you even said that if you saw one in person, you would think that somebody put a body kit on a regular Testarossa, that you wouldn't even buy it as a car that came from the factory. And I get that. Our car was on Bring a Trailer located in San Diego, California, showing 20,000 kilometers, which is just 12,000 miles. This is a Japanese market example. And it does bear bringing one into this country because Ferrari only made 501 examples between 1994 and 1996 of this final iteration of the Ferrari Testarossa. So I thought our car would do really, really well. And I thought our car would make it all the way up to $490,000, where I thought it would sell, even though some of these things are now bringing well over $500,000. JP took the under at $450,512, and Bradley Brownell gave us a lot of reasons why he didn't like the car, and then took the high bid over me at $512,000. Interesting to see, JP. Actually, let's go to you, Wade. Sorry, you were not with us the other night. So taking a look at this rare car, the final example of and the highest specification as far as horsepower and performance of the Testarossa. They only made 500 of them for the world, so probably 200 of them were sold in the United States. This one's an import, but it's extremely low miles, and it's kind of Ferrari's signature color in Rossa Corsa. Wade, just a ballpark, what do you think this car would hammer for on Bring a Trailer?
Quick no-look price, $499,000 where it sells. Very obscure Ferrari in the world of Ferraris.
Very good.
But if you know, you know. You know?
Yeah.
What do you think of the car,
right
Wade? I mean, you are a Ferrari owner, and your take as this car to you is a little bit, it's not more contemporary to you, but, as someone like 2005, or when was this? This is 1995. Like, I remember I was around buying cars in 1995. You were, in junior high or something like that? So I don't know how closely you were paying attention.
Wade was born after this car.
I was born in 1995.
There you go. That's my point. So, yeah, exactly. That's how old I am. And
yeah.
I'm old and bad at math. So there you have it. So this car was a car that we remember, but still this car to you, what do you think of this car compared to the older ones, or do they just blend together to you?
So I'm ashamed to say, as a Ferrari owner, this is not a car that I was super familiar with, even like slowly learning about Ferraris, because it's just so obscure. I mean, they only made 500 and something of them. There were only a couple of hundred in the US. They don't come for sale that often. They're very expensive. they don't have like the vibe of a Testarossa. They don't have the excitement of like a 348 or a 355. They weren't like into that generation yet. It's like such a weird car where they like were sort of trying to make it like 80s, 90s, and then sort of trying to make it modern. And like you said, it kind of went off of like the Ferrari Mythos concept car where they had a very modern, quirky front end, but then the ass end is still like Testarossa and 80s and boxy and square. So it's like two halves of a whole car that is, you know, very interesting and very collectible. But I don't know, like I said, unless you don't really know what this car is, I don't know that it is that exciting for that many people, other than the fact that it's just a very rare, obscure Ferrari.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Go ahead, JP.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Deep. Go for it. Sorry, I'm trying to do some technical stuff here while you guys are going at it.
That's a good guess at $499. Interesting thing happened on the way to the Hammer. Our car hammered at $400,000 where it failed to sell on just 11 bids. John, our car did not go much further at all from when we looked at it. So, you know, there's so many things you could open up with this discussion about it failing to sell, you know, somewhere in that $100,000 to $150,000 below what it should be worth or where we think it would have gone. So I would start with the fact that it's a gray market car. Is the U.S. Ferrari collector market, like, are they that disinterested in a gray market example? I say when there's only 500 in the world, it doesn't or it shouldn't matter. So I don't think that's what's going on. Is the Testarossa just soft? Well, regular Testarossas have actually been on the climb in this last little run in collector car market value that we've seen. JP, you and I have been covering for the last 2 years. Testarossas are one of the cars that benefited from that. And now, you know, good early Testarossas are regularly bringing $150,000 or more. I would think that would push the value of a 512M up. So I don't really have like a quick, you know, I can tell you why this car didn't sell. I don't know. I'm actually surprised that this car not only failed to sell, but failed to sell $100,000 below the mark. Like if it got to my number at 490 and failed to sell, you say, okay, well, this guy maybe unrealistically symbolic wanted 550,000 for the car. They wanted to break a record because of the miles or the color or something. But at 400,000, the audience was like, yeah, I'm not interested, or I'm saving my money and going to Amelia Island next week. I'm not going to buy this thing sight unseen off of Bring a Trailer. I'll just wait and take my $500,000 and go to Florida, where I can touch the car I'm going to buy. Could the timing be bad that he ran this car right before one of the two biggest car auction weekends in the country? What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a car that people in the room have to know what the heck the thing is. And even as a car person, I literally completely, totally forgot about this car. And and I wasn't kidding when I saw this car, when you put it on the list and I clicked on it, I really did think that it was a kit car. Look at the, I'd love to dig around Craigslist and other places. Like, look at this car, right? That I found on Craigslist. This is an actual Ferrari Dino with a kit on it. This isn't a Fiero. This is an actual Ferrari that someone boogered up to look like a more modern car. God knows when they did this. These are the types of atrocities that happened in the 90s, before Wade was born or right around the same time. People always talk about, you know, the dark ages, the medieval times is when all the worst things that humans have ever done. But look at this car and tell me that the dark ages are here. Like, we survived this, you guys. You know, we always make Holocaust jokes on this show. Okay, we don't. That's just me. But this is a Holocaust right here. This car is just an absolute atrocity. You see something like this and go, yet we're going to go to this Ferrari with these weird-ass, you know, no pop-up headlights on the front and just weird bulgy stuff on the hood. It just looks weird to me, and I just can't. There's just no way anyone would buy this and love it. It's just purely one of those things that you buy and put in the back of of the collection with all the other rich guy cars that you have somewhere. And this is going to sit in a room next to that Porsche 935 that we complained about the douchebag that would buy that. It's in a warehouse, with hermetically sealed with a plastic bubble around it. And it's just going to sit there. And every now and then, a small group of people are going to walk through the room with glasses of champagne during a cocktail party, and the guy's like, "Yeah, that's my Ferrari that I got it special. It's one of them." You're like, whatever, drive it, a-hole. Anyways, I'm over this car. I hate it.
Wade, this car failed to sell about 20 to 25% short of the mark of value. So what do you think's going on here? Do you have a quick theory on why that happened?
I mean, it could be a combination of factors. I think it being a rest of the world car, we've seen like F40s and F50s from around the world still command high dollars that people bring to the US or they export elsewhere. But this is not a halo car, right? It's kind of this weird crossover car. They made so few of them, but if you don't know what it is, it's not going to be that exciting. If you're a Ferrari collector, this probably isn't going to be like the first big Ferrari purchase that you're going to make. Like JP said, this is going to be the 27th Ferrari that you have, and you have this one because maybe the other Ferrari guy doesn't, and he doesn't even know what this is like the rest of us. So I think it's that. I also think, maybe the market is a little soft on some things, but the market could be soft like 5%, maybe. I don't think 25%. I think the combination of it being a rest of the world car is probably the thing that held it back more than anything else. And when you put the rest of the things in, maybe that adds up to the lower value. But at the end of the day, like you said, there's probably not literally, but basically a dozen people in the world who know what this car is, have the money for it, have the space for it. And maybe if you put it in front of a Sotheby's or an Amelia Island, those 12 people will be there with eyes on this car. Maybe Bring a Trailer wasn't the right place, but I know Bring a Trailer has sold a couple more of these over the years. So I don't know, but at the end of the day, I mean, this isn't a car that really gets me excited, even as a Ferrari owner. It's certainly not in my top 10 or top 20 Ferraris that I would get. And I think that's what most people would say, honestly.
The only good thing about this car is that you get to use the word shuriken when you're talking about it. I mean, that's just the ninja throwing star wheels. That's cool. I want to say the word shuriken as many times in any given week. And when I look back at all the weeks, the last, year, 2 years, 3 years, I can think of very few weeks where I got to say shuriken even once. And here it is this week. It's only Sunday, and I've probably said it a half dozen times. So we're starting out well. What do you guys think of the results of this goofy looking but very rare and probably pretty expensive, valuable 1995 Ferrari Testarossa 512. Did this car bring the kind of money that the owner should have taken, or was the owner smart to hold on to the car and wait for sunnier skies? Let us know in the comments below. And what other cars did we make predictions on in the last episode? Michael Deep.
JP, you picked a 2006 Land Rover Range Rover Sport HSE that was both running no reserve and an alumnus of Bring a Trailer. Our car was located in Mettawa, Illinois, showing 60,000 miles. It is worth noting that just a couple years ago, in November of 2022, this very car sold on Bring a Trailer for $15,750, at that time showing just 49,000 miles. So 11,000 miles, and a year and a half later, the car comes back to Bring a Trailer. But it also comes back to Bring a Trailer having been involved in a very minor accident showing minor damage as per the Carfax report. So after we looked at this car and Bradley Branell and I stopped laughing, JP Wade was willing to die on that hill for the Range Rover Sport, saying that this was the best looking SUV that has essentially ever come off the graced the planet Earth. And that's high praise because of how much he likes the G-Wagon. And, of course, Bradley Branell and I pounded the table that a Cayenne, perhaps maybe not more beautiful, certainly a superior car. So, John.
Okay, I know it's not, I'm out of turn. It's not my turn. We have a process on this show. But I agreed. Look at this. I'm stammering. I agreed that the Cayenne is a better car. I didn't say, and the question wasn't whether or not the Cayenne is better than the Land Rover. The question was whether or not it's prettier. And clearly the Land Rover is the better looking vehicle, even though the Cayenne is the better vehicle. You please continue, but I just can't let this fake news BS continue on my own show.
And that's exactly what it is. We diluted your argument by just saying the Cayenne's a superior car, so it doesn't matter if the Range Rover's good or looking, because nobody would drive one.
You just said gooder looking? I mean, I thought
it's a POS.
The Cayenne's gooder looking. I rest my case. I'm good. That's probably
not a point of sale. That's a piece of Starbucks. So, anyways, I was the high man. I said $11,500, and I don't think anybody else, even in the herd, bid over $10,000 on this POS. JP, who loved the car, only gave us $9,000 for it, and Bradley.
Gosh, dag nabbit! I didn't love the car. I said it was the prettiest car. In fact, I ished all over it. The thing is, if you're watching this live right now, you didn't just watch it, but we break these videos into we marry the first half with the second half. So if you're watching this second half, you probably 48 seconds ago, you just heard everything I said, and now you're watching my partner, Michael Deeb, completely gaslight you guys. Look, don't let my partner, try to snow job this BS.
It's so weird that JP would only bid $9,000 on a car he likes. So anyways, Bradley, who couldn't be bothered to even cover this car, gave us $6,500 for his bid. Based on everything we just told you, Wade, very good-looking car, but not a car that any of us would want to own because of reliability and build quality. This car had also minor damage, but still low miles and attractive colorway in black and tan. What would you guess this car would bring on BAT when it sold for $15,750 in November of 2022, when the market was arguably warmer?
Well, look, I don't want to make fun of the president of the Land Rover Club here, JP, and the foremost Land Rover expert who.
Hold on. I got to Velcro my sneakers. Hold on.
But this is an interesting car. I want to say that it's worth half as much as it once was. It's worth 1/10 of what it once was, probably, but I don't know. For $8,500, it is a decent truck. The only thing that's good. Yeah, the only thing that's echoing in my brain, which JP has a comment pulled up, is Doug DeMuro, who we criticize his cars and site from time to time as well. But a long time ago, when he was writing for Jalopnik, he had a car. I don't know if this was the model or the year, but he had his bumper-to-bumper CarMax warranty that he kept using on this car that paid for itself 50 times over the course of a year or two that he had it, because solid inevitably advice. Everything crumbles around you as you drive this. So that's a thought, but for under 10 grand, I feel like it's still a decent vehicle. And JP, I'm sure you bought this or have 2 or 3 of them, right? So you'll have to let us know if this was a good deal.
No, I talked to Rochelle today, and she told me that John's going this week to the pound to get an English Bulldog. I can't believe it.
Oh, really?
So
anyway,
yeah, the one that Doug DeMuro had, it wasn't the Sport, so it was just the Range Rover, the full size Range Rover. It was a couple years earlier but it was the same generation, and the Range Rovers and the Range Rover Sports, oddly enough, are not on the same chassis, even though they look so similar. The Range Rover Sport is actually on a Disco chassis. So it is a slightly more reliable. I mean, using the word reliable when you're describing a Range Rover Sport of any kind is patently absurd. But compared to the Range Rover, it absolutely is reliable. Here's the thing, too, is that I know we're off the subject here, but it is fascinating to think what Doug DeMuro did is he made CarMax. They owe him $1 billion because even though it cost him gajillions of dollars to service that warranty, that let everybody know that, oh, hell yeah, get a CarMax warranty. And I don't think CarMax would have made it if it weren't for Doug DeMuro doing all his silly CarMax videos. He also tried to get them to buy a Viper and a bunch of other silly stuff, and they just blew up because of him. So anyways, that's one of the good things that our friend Doug has done. But what actually happened? What are the results of this auction, Deeb? I think the results are pretty funny.
All right, JP. So here it comes. Yeah. Ready or not. Our car hammered on Bring a Trailer for $12,000 and sold for 27 bids. So the 11,000 miles and the minor damage on the Carfax report only cost this guy, let's do the math here, $3,750. That is unbelievable. Look, I know that that interest, it means he's actually lost a lot more value than just the $3,000 on paper. But still, apparently I was the only guy in the room that thought this car would break 10 grand, and it actually sold above my bid, which is bananas. I actually missed a Yahtzee by just $500. John, what do you think here? Is it just because BAT is that big a thing? Like, all right, here's an interesting question. Looking at this car and talking about Doug DeMuro, I actually think this car would have done better on Cars and Bids. However, the result is so surprising, I'm not sure that it would have. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Yeah, I would have agreed with that statement had I not seen the results of this. And this just goes back to the whole thing that it's like BAT gets so many eyeballs on cars that, and you and I have actually discussed the idea too. I think there's space out there. All these auction sites that we constantly talk about, they're always chasing after, the big, like the Testarossa that we just talked about, the CGTs, all these like really expensive, they want to get the hypercars on there where they want to get the biggest, most badass cars. I think there's room out there for someone who's going to just sell like under $10,000 cars. Right. But back to this thing, I think when you're on BAT and you're cruising around and everything's selling for 50, 60, 100, $1 million, you're like, oh, hey, there's something that's around $10,000. Maybe I'll actually buy that. I mean, one thing you guys didn't mention, but we did mention on the last episode, is that not only did this car have a Carfax issue, but it was from Hawaii originally and then spent time in Alabama. Like that underside has got to be just like Swiss cheese with rust. I mean, this is if you saw this on Facebook Marketplace, you'd be like, from Hawaii? Yeah, pass, moving on. And they are all over Marketplace for like $10,000. And the other thing that's interesting right now, though, and I think probably the reason why it sold for as much is that right now, at this very moment, like literally this week and probably the next 3 weeks, is that kind of peak buying time for cheap cars. A lot of car dealerships look forward to March. All winter long, when there's that lull and there's that dip, they're always going out there and they're gobbling all these like, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 cars because they know that in March, all the cheap people start getting their tax refunds back. People who actually get a tax refund that don't actually have to write a check to the tax, they actually get a check back. They get that money, and that's their yearly savings account, and they go out and buy a cheap, $10,000, $15,000 cars. So cars that are worth $10,000 in December are typically worth $15,000 for most of March because those people get that little bit of money, they go out and they get a car, and then that's their car for a year until that thing breaks down, they do it again. Or there are people that are trying to get out of their really expensive payments and they're just dumping them and they're like, well, I need a car and I've got a little bit of cash in my pocket, and they're probably not going to ever be able to scrape together another $10,000 again until they get their next refund. So, these little kind of cheap cars, and this is a baller car. That type of person is probably a stripper or, not exactly someone who's financially adept, let's put it that way. So, they want something that's kind of flashy too. So what do you get for a baller on a budget? You get yourself a Range Rover. Wade,
yeah,
you're a stripper.
I might have to be.
Out of the 3 guys on the show, you're the one guy that might be a stripper. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I'll take that as a compliment. But no, to your point, I was going to say, we talk about this week after week, that there is this sort of gap in like decent used cars. And I don't know that this car qualifies as like one of those decent sub 20K used cars that seem to kind of be super popular because it's maybe still not the most reliable thing. And like you said, I'd be really curious just how musty and moldy this thing is, living on the Hawaiian Islands for however many years it was. But it is sort of that baller on a budget car, or even more so, something interesting, something off-roady, something kind of practical. And for, under $15,000, if, fingers crossed, it lasts 6 months without a problem, I still think it's probably a pretty fun ride.
He loves it. Chris Carbine is getting impatient with the nerds. Look at this. The nerd herd is speaking. He's like, enough on this baller turbo. Sorry. Turdo. I see what you did there, Chris. What do you guys think of the results of this Land Rover? Is this like the baller budget thing to get instead of like, do you get like 3 or 4 of these instead of a G-Wagon and just, because a G-Wagon is going to cost $50,000 or more. So you just get a couple of these and you always have one in the pocket ready to go and you're still spending less money. That's my take on it. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. And what was the other car that we made a big prediction on the last episode?
So JP, in a very serendipitous way, we had Bradley Brannell on the show, and we also had teed up before we got him as a guest this 2005 Porsche Carrera GT. Bradley, who writes for Jalopnik, had just written an article about the do not drive, do not operate gag order that both Porsche and then eventually the United States Department of Traffic issued to the owners of Carrera GTs because of a problem with corroding suspension pieces that could make the car very dangerous to operate. So we introduced the car and let Bradley really get into it and sort of review his article. In the article, he compares a Carrera GT to a very expensive paperweight. And then we wondered aloud at the conclusion of this review if those current orders would negatively affect the value of Carrera GTs. Our car was listed on Bring a Trailer showing 7,000 miles, which is interesting because it's neither high miles nor low miles. Low miles for these cars, I would say, is below 2,000 miles. And high miles for these cars, I would say, is somewhere in the 16,000 miles and up. 7,000 miles is kind of in no man's land. So one wouldn't say that this car would be a lower value one, nor would this be like a full retail one that in some cases have recently been pushing 1.7 million and up. Our car was actually at about, oh man, I had it all teed up here, but our car was at like 1,100,000 when we looked at it. And then I started the bidding off at $1,350,000. JP, you took the over by $100,000 at $1,450,000, and Bradley Brannell took the under at $1,250,000. So knowing that you can't drive these cars, and if you do, your insurance would not have to cover you. So Wade, if you decided I'm rich, I don't care, I'm going to take this car out, and you get into a little fender bender, your insurance company can say they have the legal right to not cover your accident because the Department of Traffic told you not to operate the vehicle. So you keep the insurance policy on there to make sure a ladder doesn't fall on the car in the garage and dent your carbon fiber tub. But knowing that you can't drive the cars, knowing that the fix is probably not going to get here until the fourth quarter of 2024, what do you think, looking at this sort of medium mileage GT silver with the terracotta interior? I mean, this is sort of the poster child for the car, and it's got very fair mileage on it indeed. Wade, give us your spitball number for this car, unless you may have already seen it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know that the no drive order matters to most people who have this much money in this car. And this is also kind of like, I mean, it is a nice spec, but it's not like an interesting spec. There was a bright yellow Carrera GT at Barrett-Jackson in January that sold for like $1.8 million, I believe. So that's kind of like a high price anchor. I feel like this is still a $1.4.5 million car. I give it 1.4.
Yeah.
1,450,000. But
you're agreeing with JP on the money.
Yeah. But I am curious if there's any sort of lasting, like from his article or from, people's thoughts on not being able to drive this, or if, you buy this car and you say, okay, I'm going to take, just to bring up Doug again, he completely redid the suspension on his, and it costs, I forget what he said, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 maybe. And if you put that in your budget and the weeks or months it takes to fix that and modernize it or do whatever it is, I wonder if that sort of affects the value or what people are looking at with this car. So I'm curious. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and so an interesting thing happened. This car got like another half dozen bids, John. And then the hammer fell at $1,199,000. And this is where it gets interesting. It sold for that amount. It was just 16 bids, but at basically 1.2, this guy took the money. And I would say he took the money because he needed to get off the car because he's not going to be able to enjoy it for the next 6 to 8 months. But I agree. Even Bradley thought the car would bring more money. And you and Wade are at 1.4, and I was at 1.3. I think this car, if they lift that do not drive thing in the fall, for cars that are cleared, in other words, Porsche inspects them and they're not deemed as being dangerous, or the retrofit has been put into the car. I'd say this car was well bought, and that the guy should look at, having at least 10 to 15% equity in the car the moment the gag order comes off, because that 1.2 to me seems light for a car as nice as this one is. Would you agree with that, JP, or no?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a dip because of all this, which just surprises me because the people that are in the market for a car like this, it's not like when you talk about a CGT to normal people, like you hear something like, a clutch job for one of these is $25,000. Like 25 grand, right? Doing one axle of brakes is probably going to cost you $15,000, $20,000. Like you're talking about everything you do, things that normally cost what you would call a lot of like if you have a GT3, right? To do the brakes on the carbon ceramics is like $5,000 or $6,000, right? And that just seems crazy to people who drive, I don't know, like a Honda CRV or something like that, or even a Range Rover. Well, not really, but because actually a Range Rover Sport and like 911s, you expect, okay, it's going to cost me $2,500 to do the brakes, but then you're like, no, it's $25,000. And you're like, oh, I got to think about this. Like, even if I did have the $1.5 million to buy something like a CGT, owning it is you have to have that money in the bank. And the people that know these cars know that. Nobody's like, unless you just won the lottery, right? You're that guy. Oh, I hit the Mega Millions. I'm going to go out and go on BAT and buy the first thing. Those are the guys that go out and usually get Lambos and stuff like that. Which they wind up getting surprised by how expensive those are to maintain too. But even like 959, all these cars that we all know of as $1 million plus cars, they cost so much money to keep on the road. And if you're not prepared for that, don't even bother bidding on something like this. So this whole stop use order to me seems ridiculous because it's like everyone's going, oh my gosh, how much is this repair going to be? How expensive? Well, who cares? Everything's expensive on one of these. Everything. It's always 5 figures or more to do something on one of these things. So whatever. I'm just really shocked by this result. How about you, Wade? I'm just shocked that it's sold, honestly.
Yeah, I'm shocked by the price, but like you said, I'm more shocked that it sold. And I'd be curious. I don't know what the listing says. I don't know the history or the owner or anything like that. My thought is like maybe there's some sort of element to the previous owner who perhaps got lucky and bought this car 5 or 6 years ago when it was $750,000 or $800,000. And now he was like, all right, it's over $1 million no matter what. If it sells, it sells. I'm up 200 grand and I don't have to spend another 50 to fix the suspension, or I'm done, spending 15 grand a year to maintain it and service it. I enjoyed it. I'm good. Or it could have been, hey, he pulled the reserve hoping that maybe that inspires another $250,000 of people who know it's going to sell, who are really invested, who want to make sure that they get the one Carrera GT that's for sale on Bring a Trailer, this month or over the course of a couple of months, because they don't come for sale that often. So if you're looking for this car, I'm sure, you always have your finger on the pulse. When these cars go for sale, there's probably a small amount of people ready to pay a large amount of money for this car, but the large amount of money didn't hit this car. So I'm really curious, but like you said, I'm most curious why this individual got out of it. And I feel like maybe he just was like, I've made some money, I've driven it, I don't want to dump anymore. It is what it is.
It's an interesting take. I think all the buyers were so enamored by the Range Rover Sport that they just forgot about the CGT. What do you guys think of the results of this CGT? Should it have sold like it did, or should the buyer have held on and waited for more money, maybe in the spring or maybe at a live auction or something, or should just be out there hanging, not letting so is it ethical to sell a car that you're not even allowed to drive on the road? What do you guys think? I know we're trying to move on from this, but
I mean, I would say how unsafe. Like every car has recalls at some point or another. I think it depends on the scope of the recall and like what parts and pieces. But I guess a no drive order is pretty serious.
That's pretty serious. Yeah, it's one thing to say, oh, hey, we need to replace the air conditioning unit or something squeaking, or what is it? The Range Rover, or not the Range Rover, but the Broncos paint is peeling or something like that.
The leaky hardtop.
Yeah, but the thing might kill you. It's kind of I'll buy one, whatever. No big deal. It's only $1.5 million. Yeah, let us know in the comments below, guys. It's crazy. Go ahead, Deep. Deep, you're going to say something?
Wade's got a Ferrari, JP. Yeah, Wade's got a Ferrari. His car constantly has 7 open recalls. If his car only has 3 open recalls, it's because he just took it home from the dealer.
Yeah, that's fair.
You could be like MSNBC or something and say like, oh, the Teslas have a recall. It's like, no, it's a software update. Shut up. It's like a phone. Yeah, guys, I think this is it's just interesting to see that a car like this, even though you're not even supposed to drive the damn thing on the road, is still getting bid well over $1 million, and people are still acting like the car market is absolutely crashing. We've said it in the last episode. We say it on multiple episodes in the last, 6 months, that regular car market, if you're buying a CRV or a minivan or Wrangler or something like that, that market is taking an ish. But these collector cars are in a different category, and BAT and Cars and Bids and even PCAR Market, they're still bringing really strong money for cars like this because they're not making much stuff like this anymore. And speaking of buying cars, there's car deals happening in the chat right now. Carbine, I think, may have sold a 24 Carrera T. What's up, man? Geez, where's our commission? You're supposed to go to Gaudin Porsche to get your Porsche. We love Carbine. Definitely, we recommend talking to him and looking at him.
10% of the house, Carbine.
You got to give Gaudin a chance too. Hopefully that would be awesome if you guys actually struck up a deal and a car deal happened in the chat. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with brand new predictions, and we will see what we think this lot of cars will bring on the auction site, and if it will prove that the market is crashing or prove that it just keeps going up and up and up. We'll be right back. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Gaudin Porsche of Las Vegas and Gaudin Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Gaudin. This guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Gaudin Porsche of Las Vegas. If you don't subscribe to Bid Nerds on YouTube right now, I'm gonna shoot this 997. If you said, wait, that's a 996, you're a nerd. So subscribe to the new YouTube channel, Bid Nerds. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. Hey, we are back. All right, let's get to some predictions. We got new folks in the Nerd Herd. Welcome, Rhea, who knows everything. She came out to Cars and Cafe this morning with Doug with the super badass RSR build that he just finished. Oh my God, you guys got to see this car. That'll probably be popping up on BAT sometime soon. But you guys in the Nerd Herd, you've got some new competition. Let's see your bids along with ours. We love watching them. Michael Deeb, what's the first car that we are going to make a prediction on for this episode?
All right, JP. Anthony from Our Smiths submitted to us a 1978 Porsche 928 on Bring a Trailer. JP, pull this car up and take a look at this thing. So this is an interesting car. So this car has been owned
by the way, Anthony never did get back to me and tell me why he suggested this. So we're on our own on this.
Right. Yeah, so I'm going to tease him a little bit about it. So this car has been owned by its current owner for 34 years, and it's a rest of the world example. It's worth noting, JP, that 1978 was the first year of production for the Porsche 928. However, there are some small differences between the ROW, the rest of the world example, and the North American one. Namely, the first thing that comes to mind is the 20 extra horsepower that is under the hood of the European examples. Our car here, as it sits in Chatham, Ontario, Canada, is sitting at 289,000 kilometers, which is about 180,000 miles, and it is a non-running project example. So this is high mileage. The motor failed and has gone undiagnosed. They do not know what the problem is with the motor and why it stopped working about 24 years ago. So the car has been sitting, and while the best of intentions, and I'm sure all of us as car people, car guys and car gals in the chats and on the show, we can all relate to buying a car that we swore we were going to have the energy and the money and the time to fix that we never got around to doing. Well, this guy's been sitting on this car He's owned it for 34 years, and it broke down on him 24 years ago, and he's never fixed it. So now he's throwing it up, no reserve, on Bring a Trailer, and this car caught Anthony's eyes. So I will just start by saying it would take somebody who works with their hands for a living, like Anthony of Hoursmith, to look at a project car and go, ooh, that's really interesting. Because right now I am buried in an Alfa Romeo Alfetta that I have poured, I'm embarrassed to admit, like $20,000 to $30,000 in, and I still can't drive that car. So I don't have the bandwidth to even look at this and get inspired, despite having that really cool blue-black Pasha interior. 5-speed manual, 4.5-liter V8, rear-wheel drive. This car was in production from 1978 until 1995, but this is the very first itineration of it. The European cars always made a little more horsepower. That Delta was smaller in the early days. It grew a lot until we finally got the GTS on our shores with the full tilt 345 horsepower motor. But this car is a long ways away. And I would contest this, Anthony, and everybody else that's listening, that even if the motor on this car wasn't broken, if the motor had just been sitting for 24 years, you'd probably still need to open it up and fix it. So I don't understand, unless you're doing the work yourself, JP, like if Tony Mazzagatti bought this car or, Todd bought this car, I just don't understand how like a layperson could buy this car and then start pouring money into it, because values would not justify the expense it would take to get this car cleaned up, mechanically sorted, and back on the road. Plus, if it's not on a non-op, you could be looking at a fortune in registration penalties, So nothing about this car makes sense. And, by the way, it's still sitting in Canada. You'd have to bring it into the United States. Anthony, if you're watching, please chime in as to what it was that was the most interesting thing about this car to you, because it's interesting, but it's also interesting in like, who on earth would buy this thing, because the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So JP, I lob it over to you. Perhaps not have done a great job in introducing it or missing the point of it. I love the Porsche interior. I do dig the older 928s, and the European ones always have more power. But this one looks like it's too far away, literally, physically, and financially, to be worth it. Do you see any redeeming qualities here?
This does look like it was pulled right out of the lake 25 years later after risky business. So Anthony has hopped in here. He's saying that apparently he's tempted to buy his second junk 928. He was gonna buy it and give it to his son. He loves buying junk and junk projects. Well, this is it, my brother. This is definitely junk. You're right about, like, look, some of the people in the comments are talking about like mechanics won't even work on these anymore. The Porsche, if you're a Porsche independent and you have 3 or 4 lifts and only a couple techs, look, these Porsche independent shops are having a very hard time finding techs. So if you're an indie shop, you might have 2 or 3 guys working for you. Do you want a rack being taken up to fix a 928, or do you want a rack being taken up to fix a 911? And the problem with these 928s, because they're transaxle cars, almost anything you do to them means that the whole damn powertrain has to come out. Like, the transmission and the driveline and all that stuff, which means you can't wheel the car around. It's got to stay on that lift. And now that lift is dead, and it's an underutilized utility from the shop's point of view. So it's really, really expensive for them to actually accept one of these to do even inexpensive jobs. So a lot of the independent guys are like, they're charging 2 or 3x on the hourly rate to work on these. And this includes 944s too. So that's something to really think about. You think you're getting a deal. Oh yeah, it's a less expensive Porsche, but bro, it's going to cost you later in the long run. Wade, what do you think of this project? Basket case.
Yeah, I don't want to completely ish on it, but this is a tough sell for so many reasons. I mean, even if it were a running and driving example in Canada with 289,000 kilometers. I mean, it's not that collector grade, special, nice of an example, even if it were great. So you have to think about, like, if you're going to put money into it, you're still going to have an almost 200,000 mile car that was in Canada, that if you buy it in Canada and keep it in Canada and you're Canadian, okay, fine. But I can't imagine anyone from the US would be interested in this. And I don't know that I would call this car a project car, because a project car insinuates that like some work has been done. And I don't know that this is like even a barn find, because it just like, it's not a very, low mile example of anything. It's not something that's been hidden. It was driven really, really, a lot of miles, and then it just seems to have died because it drove a lot of miles, and they just never fixed it. So I can't possibly imagine who is interested in this, and I can't possibly imagine.
His name is Anthony. What are you talking about?
Anthony,
not only can you imagine him, you can see him in the chat.
It's hard. It's hard to imagine. I'll say that. If it's if all the parts are there and you want to use it as a parts car, or you're gonna like LS swap it or something, and you have the labor of love for this car, maybe. But I don't know that many people who this car would be for. And, it's garnering a lot of like comments and questions on BAT, which is sort of interesting. Shout out to the guy who either was too dumb to read the listing and said, "Could you please post a driving video?" or did it ironically, whatever the case may be. That one really stood out. But it's weird. And at the end of the day, like, I don't even know if this car, if it were running and driving, it would be more than like a $15,000 car. So like, how much money could you dump into this to even make it run and like feel good? I would almost just say like, turn it into something else. LS swap it, make it ridiculous, make it like this crazy wild thing, and just like start over. But I guess we'll see. Very, very weird. Very weird.
Very peculiar. All right. Well, so what's a basket case worth on BAT? We talked about on the other side of the break how like cars that like that Land Rover, the Range Sport there, that should be a $6,000 or $7,000 car on Facebook Marketplace, and it brought 12 on BAT. Is this the kind of bucket that should only bring a couple of grand on Marketplace, but on here it's going to bring a lot more? Michael D, what do you think it's going to bring?
I just don't. So here's the thing. Like, I don't even understand how you could open up that motor to try and fix it. Cause like if you just took the motor apart, like just took the top end off or resealed it just to like clean it out and get it running again, because it's been sitting for 24 years, you'd already be buried in the value of the car, because fair condition for these cars is like $14,000. Good condition is like $39,000. This car, even if it's running, is barely fair condition because of the super high miles, the wavy bodywork, and although it's got beautiful Porsche interior, it's starting to split in some of the corners on the driver's seat. So I think if Anthony and his son decide to buy this car as a project, I would assume their route to getting this running would be to find a 928 motor that is operational, buy that, and just swap the blocks and drop the an operational 928 motor in there, and they could probably do that for closer to $10,000 and not be totally buried in the car. JP, our car closes tomorrow. It's sitting at currently $3,100, and that's just on 5 bids. I don't think this thing makes $8,000. I'm oh my God, I'm going to give you $6,500, and yeah, I think that's it. $6,500.
Well, you were saying that Anthony should have if he has an engine. Or okay, did you give us a number?
Yeah.
Okay. So if he has an engine, and he's texting me, he's actually saying that he does. He's got, in fact, it sounds like it might be so he's got a 4.7 twin distributor, 315 horsepower motor from an 84 Euro.
Yeah.
So okay, great. That
sense.
definitely makes more sense. You have the engine ready to go in it, so you're not trying to salvage this particular engine. That just seems like a fool's errand here. I have a basic formula for buying used cars, right? It's a 3-part formula. It's very simple. I'm a simple person. I'm poor at math. I'm not very smart. I'm not very quick on my feet. So when I'm presented with something like, okay, are you or are you not going to buy this old classic car? The 3 factors are: 1, the mechanical condition; 2, the aesthetic condition, which is, body, paint, interior, all that kind of stuff. Mechanical is obviously the engine, the powertrain, the brakes, all that kind of stuff. And then the third one is value, is the price, right? You have to have 2 out of 3. You can't have just one that's really good and the other 2 are terrible. You have to have 2 out of 3. So it has to be mechanically sound, and a really good price, but needs, aesthetics fixed. Maybe it needs body work, or maybe it needs cleaning or something like that. Or maybe it looks great and drives great, but the price isn't so good, so it's got to have 2 out of 3 to make it worthwhile. This car does not seem like there's any chance that could be even 1 out of 3. Mechanically, it's obviously worthless. Aesthetically, holy crap. I mean, give me a break, right? And then the value, it's all, what is it going, where is it at right now, Deeb, on the auction?
That $3,100.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay $3,100 for it at all. There's no way, I wouldn't pay $1,000 for this. I wouldn't even take this car if they offered to ship it to me for free, because this thing is actually literally a cost center. This car is a radioactive, I cite the Ugnaughts from the show Aqua Teen Hunger Force, right? They thought they stole a check, but they stole a bill. This thing is radioactive. Once it comes into your world, it is going to suck life away from you. Run away from this thing. Find one that looks great, but is mechanically crappy and is also a good price. That's the only way this formula works out for you, Anthony. So you're saying it's at $3,000 right now?
3,100. Where are you at,
3,100.
JP?
I'll go 39,928 just because whatever. Please don't buy this car, Anthony. You won't be able to afford to come down and see us at Air and Water because you will be broke after this thing. What do you think, Wade?
Yeah. So first off, I think I love your checklist. And I would say from my own perspective, the big question is this car worth saving as a car? Is this a nice example of what this is? And arguably it's just not. So, you kind of have to think about the fact that if you put the time and money to make this car right, it's really not that valuable or interesting. If you put the time and money to make this car something totally new, you're never going to get any of that money back. And maybe if you just love turning cars into something else, it's just kind of your hobby. That's fine. I would agree that there's probably no reason to buy or save this car. And with that being said, especially being in Canada with everything else, I don't see it getting any more bids. Maybe if Anthony throws in another $100 or $200, I'll say $3,300, and he, maybe if he's serious, that's about it. But for 3,300 Canadian rupees, I can't possibly imagine why you would get this car and what you would do with it, other than maybe some of the parts are worth something. But I mean, are the parts alone, the body work, the
amount of time it would take to strip this thing down and catalog it and
could you
ship
make
all this?
Could you make $5,000 anywhere?
Nothing is good in it. The only thing that might be good is the glass. And glass is a pain in the ass to remove. He said, so Anthony's saying right there, he's out at $4,700. He says that the transaxle is worth more than that for the swap. Okay, yeah, I guess. I think the only way restoring this car would make any sense to anyone would be if you found out that it was your dad's car. And after he passed away, you're sitting there. My dad had a silver 928 when I was a kid, and he passed years ago. And I'd love to have something that would, remind. And you do a VIN search, and you're like, oh my god, that was his car. That's the only way you buy something like this that's totally worthless in all 3 vectors. So Anthony, good luck, brother. We are all rooting for you and hoping that someone outbids you. Please, God, someone outbid you. All right, what do you guys think this car will bring? Let us know in the comments below. And let's move on to the next car. Michael Deeb.
JP, I selected for us this 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9 that is an RS example. Our car is on Cars and Bids and is showing just 11,700 miles and is essentially all stock. Listen, these cars were insanely popular when they came out. Lots of kids bought them, and lots of kids drove the snot out of them. There's tons of miles on most of them, and so many modifications in the secondary market to bolt on more power and aesthetic. You could do wheels and exhaust and, boost your turbo and this, that, and the other. But to find one with such low miles, that is basically unmolested, untouched, unmodified, is a bit of a treat. And so I think Doug DeMuro's got himself a really cool car here for auction out of Blaine, Washington. JP, I love these things. These are basically homologation specials. Most of my favorite cars from every brand is a car that the manufacturer had to put high performance parts on so that they could qualify those parts for their racing series that the cars may have been involved in to be a halo car for the brand. And this was the car that carried the torch for Mitsubishi for a very long time. This car kicked ass in World Rally Championship. And Mitsubishi finally decided to bring the full tilt Lancer Evolution to compete with Subaru's Impreza WRX STI. And so there was a little bit of a horsepower war, a bit of a muscle car war that was going on in the United States between two Japanese brands. And we were the winners because we got to buy cars like this. I love this thing. I did racing school at Sears Point for like 5 days. I did 5 days of open wheel racing school, and the instructors drove these cars. So a lot of times when they wanted to teach us stuff and they wanted us to see it happening, they would put 3 of us in the car with a racing driver and take us and do laps in it. And you couldn't believe how well these cars handled on the track with 4 passengers in it. It was just amazing. So I'm always very impressed by this car. I've driven them. They're really cool. And I like this one here. Red's not my favorite color, but in this condition, it's so nice and so immaculate. I think it doesn't really matter. So JP, I kick it over to you. Any love for a Japanese hot hatch? It's not really a hot hatch, but like this hot Japanese homologation special. Would you dig something like this?
I like hot hatches. I don't like these boy racer sedan things. I just don't. I just can't get into them. They're great to drive. Getting behind the wheel of one of these is fantastic. STI, WRXs, all that kind of those 2 cars really were a blast. But there's one reason and one reason only that they exist. It's because young people, when this car was contemporary, a 20-nothing-year-old kid who maybe could afford something like maybe an MR2 or a 300ZX or a Supra, but he could afford to maybe buy the car, but no one would insure him. So these 2 brands came out with these, performance 4-doors, and it took the insurance companies years to figure out that this is a freaking sports car. That yes, it happens to have 4 doors, but they actually insure these relatively inexpensively for the longest time until the insurance companies figured it out, and then that kind of went away. But I just don't think it. Look, if you're not a kid that's worried about insurance costs, there's no reason for an adult to have one. Get a sports car, get a proper sports car. These are cool. These are fun. Yeah. Go do a rally or whatever. But if you're over 25, what are you doing? Get a life. What do you think, Wade?
Wow. Those are some fighting words. As the young amongst us, I think that these cars are very
You're
popular.
over 25.
Only barely. Only barely. I'm still rounding down. No, but like you said, it's kind of an interesting car, and it came from a time where there was that weird overlap, right? It's not technically a sports car, but it still kind of is. It's not technically a 4-door family car, but you could put 4 of your friends and head on down to In-N-Out and do some rowdy stuff afterwards. And I think that's what a lot of these cars are still doing, right? They're being bought by young people. They're just being modded out left and right. And having a nice example like this is relatively rare. And being on Doug's platform, I think it's going to attract the right kind of buyer and kind of person. I've been lucky enough to be in a couple of these cars over the years as a passenger holding on for dear life, and they're a lot of fun. But like you said, they're kind of for the irresponsible youngins who, I don't know, they kind of get a bad reputation, and I think that maybe taints these cars a little bit for not quite being like the collector enthusiast cars. They're still sort of that like young, crazy, rowdy takeover car, which is not great, but interesting still nonetheless.
How many Z generation people would even know what the hell this is? The window crank down here.
It's funny. I think there are TikToks of people saying, where does the concept of rolling the window up and down come from? And that's, roll it.
You do this to a millennial, they're like, what?
Yeah,
what's wrong with that guy's? What's wrong with that old guy's shoulder? Does anybody? So that's the big question. Will anybody pay for one of these? I mean, it's probably a nostalgia play at this point, or do young people still want these? Because it is a great car. I mean, I'll go ahead and acquiesce that this is a fantastic sports car. But if it's not cheap like they were by comparison before, I'm still kind of like, what the heck is this thing worth? What's it going to bring?
All right, JP. Cars in this Evos in this condition don't come up very often, but when they do bring serious money. A 27,000 mile example went for like $47,000 not that long ago on BAT. Our car again has just 11,700 miles, yet it's on Cars and Bids. It's currently at $40,463 on 15 bids with 1 day to go. So to me, JP, the big call is $50,000 over or under. Man, I don't know. That is tough sledding right there. I think it should bring over 50 grand, but the market is kind of weird right now. It is the sort of the dead of winter. A lot of the big collectors are distracted, and at Amelia Island this week, I'm going to say that it doesn't break $50,000, and I'm going to give you $49,000 where I think it will sell. But perhaps in the spring, little uptick in the market, I could see this car bringing over 50, but I don't think that'll happen this time around on this platform. JP, 49,000 to you. Where are you at?
Yeah, I don't think it brings near that. I don't even think it breaks 45. I'm going to say 42. I think it gets a couple $1,000s more, if that, and peters out. I mean, again, we talk about it all the time. Cars and bids. We don't see those late rallies on the actual auction bidding time. At the end, we don't see those extensions in the auction like we do in BAT. So yeah, I'm going to add $2,000, save $42,463.
Yeah, I don't think this is a over $50,000 car either. Maybe not right now. I still think it has a little ways to go though. I'm going to say $47,777, and that's still a lot of money. To your point, JP, these things aren't cheap, and they appeal to a certain type of person, whether it's collector, whether it's enthusiast. But there are a lot of other cars at 40 to 50 grand that I think I'd rather still have. Yeah. And I would feel bad driving this, because at this point, this car, you don't want to go over 15,000 miles on this car, because it will very quickly not be a collector car. This is a very nice, very clean example, great pictures, great representation, but I would just be afraid to drive it another couple thousand miles, honestly.
Deeb, what is this car worth if it has 75 or 85,000 miles? How big a hit does this thing?
Yeah, I think it. At that
is it a
mileage,
$20-something thousand car?
Yeah, I think it's like 27,000. If it's totally stock and it's all original, and maybe it brings 30 or just over 30. But yeah, what you're paying for here is an unmodified super low mile example. This is kind of a collector grade car, even though it has 11,000 miles on it, because there's just not that many. Not that many people ever put them away with no miles, because we've never seen them come to market with no miles. Yeah,
a lot like the Mark II Volkswagens that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Dark Closet is saying 28, but I think he's answering my question a little later. It's such a shame. This is a car. The only good thing about this car is how great it drives. It's such a shame because it's not good to look. It doesn't look particularly good. It doesn't look bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's an ugly car. I think it's a nice looking car, but it's not anything's oh man, I just lust over that. It's just the only thing I would want this car for is to drive the living wheels off of it. And if you can get one for half the price and it still has the miles. These things are relatively reliable too. So you don't need a low mileage one. You can get a high mileage one and just drive the heck out of it. I don't know. But it just doesn't appeal to me, I guess. So I think someone younger than me that this car was nostalgic. If this was the cool car to get when you were in your 20s but didn't have the money for it, and now you're in your 40s and you do have the money for it, that makes sense. I could see someone buying this as a nostalgia play, but that person ain't me. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. Will this little boy racer bring all the money, or is Doug DeMuro just going to be stuck with this thing? Is he going to have to play with it himself? And I could see, this is the kind of car I could see Doug DeMuro having a toy one of these and another car and going crash, making noises and stuff like that. I could see him sitting Indian style in his stupid cargo shorts somewhere. Anyways, I'm going off. All right. We have one more car to make a prediction on. What is it? Michael Deeb.
JP, you picked a car that I know nothing about, and I am in love with this thing. John selected a 2024 Ineos Grenadier. Grenadier. So Ineos is an English chemical company that is registered in London. They also sponsor a professional cycling team, but they decided that they have identified a hole in the overlander market of automobiles, and Ineos has decided to get into the car manufacturing thing. So the Grenadier is their answer to the hole in the marketplace for cool overland vehicles. They have created what is essentially an exact replica of the Land Rover Defender. It's the long wheelbase, like what would be the Defender 110, but they used none of the original tooling for the design. So to the eye, it's an exact replica, but it apparently doesn't conflict with any trademark laws or anything, because it is their own unique design, even though to the rest of us, it's a Land Rover Defender. And then they went one step further to make it a modern version of that. They are incorporating for this particular car a turbocharged 3-liter inline-6 BMW motor, which is just fantastic. So my question to you, JP, is when your Enos is it needs service, do you go to Land Rover or do you go to BMW to get it worked on? Because I didn't see a dealership on the way up to my house tonight. This car is really cool. I even like the light color of it. Maybe not my first choice, but it looks cool. The car is in Miami, Florida. The lot is on Bring a Trailer. The odometer is showing just 180 miles. And, look at this thing. What a feast for the eyes. I can't believe somebody did it and didn't get in trouble with Land Rover, especially doing it in England. Like if they were doing this in Taiwan and you're like, all right, how are we going to sue them in an international court? But that somebody is building your car without your permission, just across town is mind-numbing to me. I love it. I can't believe. Like, I know the company logo because we see Ineos decals on Formula One cars for years, but I didn't know much about the company. I had no idea they were building this Land Rover knockoff. I'm really curious to know what these things cost. So, JP, I'll send it over to you while I try to dig up what an MSRP would be on one of these vehicles.
Yeah, these are super dope. I can't believe someone would enter the car market in 2024. I mean, they've obviously been working on it for years. When they were developing this car, yes, they did actually have some trouble with Land Rover. It's not an exact replica of a Defender at all. I mean, it looks very similar to one, and obviously Land Rover did try to sue these guys, but it's so different that they didn't have a leg to stand on. This car, this is the Defender that Land Rover should have made. This is the car I've been screaming for years. I mean, when the G-Wagon and the Wrangler were the only 4-door boxy utilitarian vehicles that you could buy on the market for decades, I was always like, when is Ford going to come out with a boxy Bronco? Why did Toyota stop making the FJ Cruiser? Why don't they make another boxy one with the roof coming off? Why doesn't Land Rover bring the Defender back and make it all boxy? And finally, the Land Rover did come out with another Defender, but it's just obviously another squishy modern Defender variant. I mean, it's just like, give me a break. What the hell were they thinking? This car, someone heard me. I feel like I've been seen. I feel like I've been recognized. Like someone was in my brain. They heard my words and they're like, boom, here it is. This thing isn't just a look-alike. This is literally what the Defender should have done, because this thing has 3 lockers, as a center locker, as a front and rear diff lock. This thing is a real off-roading vehicle. It has solid axles, the articulate. I mean, this holy crap. I mean, it comes stock with a snorkel. The buttons for the diff lock are above you, so if you do get water in the thing, it's not going to mess up I mean, it's just like, this thing is, I can't believe it exists, and I didn't even know about it till recently. And to see one on the auction sites, I was really surprised, because I didn't think any were actually in America yet. So yes, somebody put in the comments that we got to call Rami. I do think Rami would like this, but it's not going to be powerful enough for him. I mean, with only the 3-liter turbo, the thing doesn't even have 300 horsepower. There's a ton of torque. The European version has a diesel version that I think would be better, but we're never going to get that. I'm sure you could increase the boost by, mapping this thing and probably get 350, 400 horsepower in it. But that's just not going to be enough for Rami. This thing weighs like 6,000 pounds or something. It is crazy, crazy heavy. But it is the formidable off-road vehicle that someone should have been making for a long time. Check out the Can you guys see the hatches above the see that? These little Safari windows, they pop up and then they pop out. Like a Wrangler or in the Bronco, they have those two things that pop off and they're big and clunky and you got to put them in the back. But these just have these two little glass hatches that like space hatches above you. And look at all that switch gear. It's all like reminiscent of an aircraft with the little pull bars and stuff like that. Look at this gear shift lever. Everything else in this thing is all like manly and tough, but then they stuck a stupid BMW little, limp dick thing in here, and it's a little embarrassing. Wade, what do you think of this thing?
I think I'm currently inside one of your dreams right now, and I'm waiting for you to wake up so you can set us all free. I remember a couple of weeks ago literally asking you what would be your answer to some combination of Jeep, G-Wagon, Bronco mutation, and here it is.
Right, it actually exists. It's on the road.
Yeah. And here it is, and you can seemingly buy one and drive it around. I have no idea what this is or where it came from. I understand now why it exists because, people like you are really going to enjoy it. But I'll also say from a perspective of new cars entering the market and new brands sort of entering the market, there really isn't anything that competes with this as it sits, right? The G-Wagons are very flashy and luxury and very, very expensive. The Jeeps have their niche. The Broncos have their niche. And like you said, Land Rover, Range Rover, they didn't really do what I think is really popular right now, which is something that's more rugged and off-road. They kind of turned their Defenders into like soccer mom trucks, and that was kind of it. But this, I think, fills that, and it's not electric. It's not super luxury. There's no screens and tech and things that are going to beep and touch screens and all that sort of stuff that are going to irritate you when you're off-roading. This is a really interesting new sort of old new thing that I think is going to be very enticing for a lot of people. But my question to you, which we sort of asked already, is where do you go to service this? And is that like a concern? I would say maybe not, because everything is relatively mechanically familiar, but there's still kind of that question like, okay, if something goes wrong, you maybe want to be able to send it to someone, right, JP? Who are you going to go when you buy this?
I mean, it's a BMW powertrain, so I don't think it's going to be that difficult. But yeah, it is a concern. The dealer network around the country is not very big. I think there's maybe a dozen of them or something like that, and none of them are going to be any kind of volume. I think it's going to be like someone has some floor space, and they're like, yeah, fine, we'll bring a couple of these in. I don't see these selling in any kind of big numbers. Again, I'm shocked that it exists. Just, I wanted to point out one other thing that's just because I know my buddy Leif is in the chat. You gun guys out there, see this rail up here? Up above, I don't know if you guys can see the cursor there, but there's this rail that goes all the way down the door, right? Any of you gun guys, this isn't a gun related tool, but if you are a gun guy, you know what a Picatinny rail is. So if you have like an AR-15 or some kind of, rifle that has, where you can bolt on all the accessories like lasers or scopes or handles and stuff like that. Well, this truck has a rail down the side of each side. So you can actually attach stuff to it. It's just like the ultimate toy. This is such a guy's rig. When you want to buy one of these, the configurator is mind-boggling. There's so many. Look at this. These handles on the top mean you can, like the step side, you can grab. It's a grabber handle, so you can pull yourself up on and access the roof, and also tie stuff down to it. I mean, all these little details are super amazingly well thought out. If you've ever done any overlanding, it's like this guy definitely knows what he's doing. Question is, how much is this thing gonna bring? What do you think, Michael Deep?
All right, JP. So let's start off first with the motor. So the motor in this thing is making 282 horsepower and 332 pound-foot of torque as a gasoline motor. This car is also available, although I don't know if it means
not in America.
In the United States, yeah, but
only the gas
it's
here.
You've got a diesel engine that they're making, which is 245 horsepower and 400 pound-foot of torque.
You can only get those in shithole countries.
Yeah, which I would love. The other thing that's worth noting is that this car, JP, the MSRP on this car, the base price for it was just $71,500. Our car is loaded with $5,800 worth of options, bringing the grand total with destination and delivery to a total MSRP of just $78,955. I know it's perhaps a weak motor for the heft of the vehicle. I think that's a tremendous value for a new car with a good warranty. The only problem is if you're not, I'm guessing, like on a coastal state, it might be hard to find a dealer to service it. But I'm intrigued. I'm super intrigued. So the question now is, how hard is it to get them in? In other words, are people that have ordered these waiting for them to come? Thus, if you have one on the ground, you could turn around and make some money on it. I think that's what's happening here, as our car is showing just 180 miles in the odometer. In other words, this guy hasn't taken it to the gas station to put gas in it, and yet he's already taken photos of it and thrown it up on BAT. At the moment, the car is sitting at $50,555, and it closes tomorrow. So, JP, just 5 bids at $50,000. Do we think it's going to get another couple of bids and make it up to MSRP, like $80,000, where this guy could turn and make some money on it? I kind of don't think it will, only because I don't think enough people know what it is, although it's going to get a ton of interest. Here's the thing. 6,285 views. If this car were on Cars and Bids, it would have gotten 5 times the views, and then I think it would have brought more money. What do you think, Wade?
It was on Cars and Bids.
Oh, it was? And what
happened? Bid to $75,000.
On Cars and Bids, and
on
it failed
Cars
to
and
sell.
Bids.
Okay.
It did not
this car with this VIN.
Yep.
With that VIN. All right.
Yeah, it sold.
So
it did not sell on January 10th. Doing my little research, because I didn't know what the heck this car was. So I was there it was.
So there you go. So it might be one of the first ones in the country, and this guy's trying to pawn it off. And he didn't make his mark on Cars and Bids, and I think that would be the superior site for this. Now he's his own worst comp on Cars and Bids. So thank you, Wade, for sharing that before I step on my own Johnson. But I think this car will get to $70,000, JP, where it will fail to sell.
Cars and Bids on paper kind of sounds like the right place. I mean, Rivians do really well there, and a lot of SUVs and off-road stuff.
Fewer cars, more views.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think BAT. I mean, honestly, if I were a Rivian dealer, I wouldn't sell one at all. I'd only put them on BAT. They need to do some marketing. Like, nobody knows this thing exists, and I don't think there's a better way to get the word out than BAT and Cars and Bids. I actually agree with this guy not selling it on Cars and Bids and putting it on another platform just gets more eyeballs on one of these. I think he's going to do really well. I think there's more money sitting around on BAT than there is on Cars and Bids. I think Cars and Bids does well for cars that people know what they are. But Bring a Trailer is really good at bringing money for cars that people didn't realize they wanted. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to go $85,000 and send it to Wade.
Yeah.
And you think it sells for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting to say that his previous no sale is his own worst comp, because I think it kind of is. I'm really surprised that Daddy Doug DeMuro didn't do a video on this car when they had it, because out of all the people, him doing a video on this and introducing the brand, the vehicle to both his viewers and his buyers on Cars and Bids, I think would have propelled this over MSRP for sure. So maybe there was something where it didn't work out, scheduling or whatever the case may be. I think similar to like a Rivian, like the more people know about this car, I think the opportunity will be there to flip it or to have it be a little bit more popular and pump the numbers up. But for right now, you're really banking on somebody not knowing what this car is and maybe comparing it to a new G-Wagon or a new Land Rover, and also not seeing it on Cars and Bids a month ago, literally. I don't know that he's going to be able to flip it, and I think he's probably going to have spent a couple of $1,000s now on auction fees and pictures and everything else. So I think it probably hit $78,000. I think if you're trying to sell it at this point, like, sell it, I guess. But if it hits $78,000, I don't know. He seems committed to selling it. So $78,000 is all it's going to get. And if you don't want it, just sell it, because it's not going to get any better, I don't think.
I don't know, man. I mean, the nerd herd doesn't necessarily. Some of you guys do, some of them don't. I mean, Gerd is up there at 94, and Gerd gets more Yahtzees than I think anyone. But a lot of folks are in that 70 range. Carbine, he's saying 98. So he's really strong on this thing. I like what Carbine said here. He's like, I'd be pretty damn bummed if I just bought a freaking Raptor Bronco or something like that and then found out that this exists. Holy crap, I'd be embarrassed. I think not enough people know that this thing is out there, and I think someone's going to see it on BAT and go, "Ooh, I want that." Because you drive this to a Cars and Coffee, or go out and to some kind of Jeep event or overlanding event. This is going to be the rig that everyone's going to want, and they're going to be like, "What is that? I didn't even know that existed." Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I don't necessarily disagree with anyone's take here. I'm just a little bit more oddly optimistic about this one. Maybe it's because I want one so bad, and it really is my dream off-road vehicle. I hope this company makes it. That's my biggest worry, is that not only would I be worried that where am I going to get it serviced, although it wouldn't be that big a deal because, again, it's a BMW powertrain, so I'm guessing that wouldn't be too bad. But really, ultimately, I don't know as this company makes it. How does a company pencil selling super bespoke $70,000-$80,000 SUVs in this market? And you get one gas crunch here in the next couple of years, and SUVs take an ish again, like they have seems like every 3 or 4 years. Gas prices go up, and everything that gets less than 30 miles per gallon just takes a dump in value. I don't know. That's gonna be a tough road for Ineos and their Grenadier. It'll be interesting if they come out with other products, do smaller versions or something like that. But anyways, what do you guys think out there? Let us know what you think this Ineos Grenadier is going to bring. Are you as curious about this as we are? Do you want this thing as bad as I do? Man, I'm excited about it, guys. We are almost done with the show. Michael Deeb, are you getting excited about Air and Water coming up at the end of April?
I am. It was really fun to go to LA for a day and see a bunch of people in the Porsche crowd. And it looks like, by all accounts, we're going to have a really good time down there. It seems like pretty much all our friends that we talked to that put their petition to get their cars into the show have gotten accepted. So that makes me really excited. We're trying to get Wade to take some time off and come to California with us, even though he's got a big week following Air and Water. But JP, please, I think it'd be awesome if members of the herd want to come to LA for a really fun Porsche weekend. This would probably be the best thing until later in the year. We will be down there. We will be involved, and we would love to have you come hang out with us. So if you're interested in coming down to Air and Water, reach out to us in the messages, talk to JP or myself, and see what we're up to and how we can connect. It'll be really fun. We'll be doing a lot of things down there. It'll be a big weekend. Can't say enough nice things about it. And my company, Hagerty, is going to have a big car auction. I might have to work that night, shave or something. But yeah, it should be a really fun weekend. Totally looking forward to it.
There are some birthdays coming up that weekend. One birthday, the Ramster might be having a birthday that weekend, and it's a big one. Right? There's some other friends in our little group that have a birthday that same weekend. So we've also been talking to some of the nerd herd up there in Idaho. The Spud Syndicate might come down. They might even come down to Vegas first and then drive with us over to LA. So that's another thing we throw out there. If any of you guys in the nerd herd want to come to Vegas and caravan with us to LA, doesn't matter if it's from Idaho or anywhere, the Northwest or whatever, we will do a big event here in Vegas first.
I might even do that if the Spud Syndicate decides to do that, and that's confirmed early enough. I might drive to Vegas and then we all go to LA together. I would tag along for that, even though Vegas is way out of my way on my way to Los Angeles. I'd be into it because let's face it, I haven't driven my car since Loop to Colt. I can't wait to get back behind the wheel of that thing. So. You and I might take that car to Seattle. You want to tell people what you're up to, or is that too soon?
Hang tight on that one. It's very likely, but I want to wait until we have some details for that. But yeah, it's very possible that
we're teasing.
Yeah, we'll tease this. March 16th in Seattle. There might be an event that yours truly and my partner Michael Deeb from Bid Nerds may go up there and do a little thing. So we'll let you know on details on that. Wade, how's Tech Daily going?
It's good. Smartphone season is upon us, so. If you're looking for some tech and things for the summer, we've got all sorts of videos and stuff on my channel. If you want to break from cars, or if you just want to say hi and see my face and my hands and unbox some phones. But that's what I'll be on the YouTubes, and I'll also be around Las Vegas, driving and going to car events and all that. It's a beautiful time here in Las Vegas. This is peak driving season because it's not hot and it's no longer cold and rainy. So over the next couple of weeks, if you're here and around and want to drive or attend some car events, come on down, enjoy the weather, have some fun, because it's not going to get any better than this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good time to have two convertibles, let me tell you. All right, guys, that is a show. I can only drive one at a time, so someone come and visit me, and you can drive the other one. All right, there it is. Bid Nerds, we will be back on, let's see, today's Sunday, so Wednesday night at 6:30. Nerd Herd, Nerd Nation, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. I know there's a bunch of you in the chat group that haven't hit the thumbs up button. Come on, guys, help us out. We love that you're here hanging out with us. Let's get more people in the herd by hitting that button. We know that you've already hit the like and subscribe button. If you haven't done that already, please do that too. And we will see you guys Wednesday night at 6:30. Thanks for hanging out. Bye. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Gaudin Porsche of Las